That's right. Jai. That's right. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Purivajagacharya Ashtota Shruta Shri Srimad Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. What happened? Oh, God. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Sixth Canto, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 4, the Hamsaguya Prayers, Text 24. Everyone could see the board okay? If you can't see the board okay, then I guess some people have devices also, phones and Kindles and things. All right. If everybody could please repeat after me. Na yasya sakyam purusho vaiti sakyuhu sakya Saka Basan Samvasataha Pure Smin Guno Yata Kunino Vyakta drishtes tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. Which one is it? Na yasya sakyam purusho vaiti sakyuhu sakavasan sambasata puresmin guno yata gunino vakta drishtes tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. Na yasya sakyam purusho vaiti sakyu sakyavasan sambasata puresmin guno yata gunino vyakta drishtes tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. Na yasya sakyam purusho vaiti sakyu sakavasan sambasata puresmin guno yata gunino vyakta drishtes tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. Would you like to chant Nagapriya? All right.
Can I chant Hare Krishna?
Who is that? Who? Hare Krishna?
Dhanabari
Hare
Mataji,
Krishna.
she wants to chant the verse.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Nayasya sakyam purusho veiti sakyu sakha vasan samvatsata purosmin guno yatha gunino vyaktadrashtre tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna, you're welcome. What about Vijay Krishna now?
Of course, Prabhu. Thank you very much. You're very kind. Nayasya sakyam purusho vaiti sakyu. Sakha vasansam vasata puresmin. Guno yatha gunino yakta drishte. Tasmai maheshaya namaskaromi.
Okay. No, not. Yasya. Whose? Sakyam, fraternity. Purushaha, the living entity. The Vaiti knows. Sakyuhu, of the supreme friend. Sukha, the friend. Vasan, living. Sambhasataha, of the one living with. Pure, in the body. Asmin, this. Gunaha, the object of sense perception. Yata, just like. Guninaha, of its respective sense organ. Vyakta drishtahe, who oversees the material manifestation. Tasmai, unto him. Maha Ishaya, under the supreme controller. Namaskaromi, I offer my obeisances. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As the sense objects, form, taste, touch, smell, and sound, cannot understand how the senses perceive them, so the conditioned soul, although residing in his body, along with the supersoul, cannot understand how the Supreme Spiritual Person, the Master of the material creation, directs his senses. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Person, who is the Supreme Controller. Purport. The individual soul and the Supreme Soul live together within the body. This is confirmed in the Upanishads by the analogy that two friendly birds live in one tree. One bird is eating the fruit of the tree and the other simply witnessing and directing. Although the individual living being who is compared to the bird that is eating is sitting with his friend, the Supreme Soul, the individual living being cannot see him. Actually, the Supersoul is directing the workings of his senses in the enjoyment of sense objects. But as these sense objects cannot see the senses, the conditioned souls cannot see the directing soul. Mine doesn't say that. Well, we need to. No, we need to. I mean, maybe the new one. Maybe the new one. The new printing from Germany has some of these. What do you call corrections? I don't know. Revisions. So, anyways, I think we need to change it to that German printing, so we could. All right, so just. But as these sense objects cannot see the senses, where is it just? But just as these sense objects, that's what it is? Okay. But just as these sense objects cannot see the senses, the conditioned soul cannot see the directing soul. The conditioned soul has desires, and the Supreme Soul fulfills them. But the conditioned soul is unable to see the Supreme Soul. Thus, Prajapati Daksha offers his obeisances to the Supreme Soul, the Super Soul, even though unable to see him. Another example given is that although ordinary citizens work under the direction of the government, they cannot understand how they're being governed or what the government is. In this regard, Madhvacharya quotes the following verse from the Skanda Purana. Yatha ragya paritvam tu pritya vedena chatmanaha tata jivo nayat sakyam veti tasmai namostute. As the various servants in the different departments of big establishments cannot see the supreme managing director under whom they are working, the conditioned souls cannot see the supreme friend sitting within their bodies. Let us therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto the Supreme, who is invisible to our material eyes. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulam Maditamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karitavachalam Pangam Langa Tegrim Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditarinam Vancha Kalpadribishta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, translation again. As the sense objects, form, taste, touch, smell, and sound cannot understand how the senses perceive them, so the conditioned soul, although residing in his body along with the supersoul, cannot understand how the supreme spiritual person, the master of the material creation, directs his senses. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that supreme person, who is the supreme controller. So, within the Srimad Bhagavatam, within the Bhagavad Gita, and many other books, there is description of the nature of the living entity, and specifically that we're not the bodies, we're soul, spirit, soul. But also there's description of how, along with the soul residing in the body, there's the super soul, Krishna. And the super soul is directing the wanderings of the living entities here and there, depending on their desires, and giving them remembrance and forgetfulness. And Sarvasuchaham Hridisanda Vishnu Mata Smritir Jnanam Upohanam Cha. We're remembering things, we're forgetting things by the grace of the super soul. And it's interesting because within the culture, or you could say the Bhagavatam culture, or the culture of Krishna consciousness, it's a very important aspect of culture that when a guest comes, to make them feel comfortable, almost to the degree that people outside of those cultures would feel uncomfortable. Means there's so much care, there's so much attention, there's so much worship almost of a guest in a person's home. Cooking for them, maybe cooking special things for them, and on and on and on. Really caring for them. My friend from India, one of my friends from India, he lives there in Kolkata, but he's older than me. I don't know, he's 50 or something. And he's a lawyer there, Kolkata. Hare Krishna. Jai, Hare Krishna, Mukunda. So he's much senior to me in so many ways. He was initiated long before me and so on. But when I go to his house, he really goes out of his way and makes me feel very comfortable. So within the culture of Krishna consciousness, not to treat a guest properly, that's like the worst, or one of the worst things to do. Fifth canto describes some I believe some things, you don't treat a guest properly. We just went through that. The description, right? And it's interesting because, yeah, he follows this very strictly. And he came to America, and he was visiting one community here in America, and he wasn't criticizing it. He wasn't, finding fault in it or whatever. He was kind of amused by it. But he came to America in Florida. He was in Florida. And he was staying at one devotee's house, and the devotee just said, "Yeah, help yourself. Help yourself to the fridge. Just take whatever you want. And for a person, within the culture of Krishna consciousness, who follows these things, how to treat a guest. I mean, you just don't do that because the hosts, they're cooking, they're doing everything. Yeah, Western culture is pretty, right? Oh, cool. All right, I'll help myself, whatever's in the fridge, right? Like a family member, right? So anyways. Now, but to ignore a guest, that's just to not cook for them and not do anything, just ignore them completely. That's really offensive. So we have Krishna within our heart. This is what's being described here. So one thing is to not receive Krishna well, not to, right? But another thing is just to ignore. That's really bad. Just to ignore. Like a friend, right? If you have a friend, and Krishna's being described as our friend, as our best friend. So to ignore your best friend, I mean, that's very disrespectful. They call you, you don't call back. They text you, you don't text back. They email you, you don't email back. And you do that perpetually. I mean, most friends will say, okay, this person's, he obviously or she obviously doesn't want anything to do with me. Okay, I'm stepping out of their life. Whereas Krishna, he's trying to communicate with us regularly, and we're not answering. But interesting enough is that he doesn't say, all right, well, forget about this person, I'm moving on. But he just waits there, patiently, just patiently waiting there for that soul to turn to him. It's quite amazing, actually. So yeah, this ignoring Krishna, that's actually the main mistake people are making in the world, and it's it's a big fault. Now the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or the 12th canto, it explains that this Kali Yuga, this particular time we're in, it's an ocean of faults. Means it just cannot be measured, the amount of faults in this particular age. There's so much, it cannot be measured. But this ignoring Krishna, this is the main one. Now, sometimes, because after all we're humans, we were talking about that last night. To err is human, to forgive is divine, right? That's the saying. So sometimes we see that as humans we're more or less forced to be in some type of circle. It means whether it's a family at a local bar, they actually call it that. You know that? You know that, Rasika Sindhu? They call some people, they go to the bar regularly, to a bar regularly, where people drink. and they say, I'm going to go visit my bar family. Means it's they're identifying, this is my family. Right. Anyways. So, but whether it's a bar family, or whether it's whether you join the golfing club, there's a golf course here, or whether you join whatever, there's people out there on these huge boats, and they're all rowing. You know, it's like a boat club out there, right, on the bay, or whether you join some Bharatanatyam dancing, or some mridanga playing group, drum playing group, whatever. There has to be, practically by force, humans have to join some type of group. In most cases. And we see that within those groups, there's a tendency to quarrel, there's a dissension, there's hypocrisy, there's things that we were discussing last night. There's this tendency to clash. And it's not just within material institutions, or it's not just within it's materialistic groups, it's in spiritual groups also. Sorry to break the news. It's in spiritual groups also. And we see that a lot of the times the mistakes we perceive in people are actually there. They're actually there. Like the people, they actually have those. They actually function under those, with those mistakes. Of course, sometimes they're imagined also. The mind is a very powerful beast. Friend. The mind is a very powerful force, and it convinced people of so many things. The mind being influenced certain ways. So sometimes they're imagined faults. Now one person, I'm forgetting his name, so please forgive me, because they say when you quote some type of authority, even if you're quoting somebody, you should give a name, but someone could look it up. But it says, man or woman or girl or boy or whatever, with God, means a living entity with God, is imperfect. What to speak of without God? Means, like, for example, just humans, even to this day, they haven't figured out how to control, for example, vanity. People, vain, thinking they're God's gift to the world, and they're the best, practically. How are you supposed to control that? Vanity, or on and on and on and on. Greed. How do you control these things? Without some spiritual foundation, these things cannot be controlled, and that's what we've seen throughout history. Now, of course, some people will say, "Hey, what about the whole religious history? There's a lot of violence went under the influence of religious people." So then we question, well, was it actually religious? Were they actually religious? Was it actually spiritual warfare? We'd say a lot of the times it wasn't, if not most of the times, if not all the times, it just was not. They're fighting over positions, they're fighting over land, they're fighting because they don't like somebody, absorbed in the dualities of material existence. So, but we accept this, that the living entity with God is imperfect, and the living entity without God, what to speak of them? Now, of course, like we were discussing last night, this particular philosophy of to err is human, in other words, I can never become perfect. In other words, I can never rise beyond my beyond base conditioning. This has ruined, more or less, the religious movements of this world. Because not only do the congregational members think they can never make it, but the leaders also think they can never make it. It means they can never be perfect, they can never follow even just basic standards. We're not even talking about perfection. We're talking about very basic standards. And Srila Prabhupada, he would point this out to religious leaders. Like we were discussing last night also, when he's talking with the reporters, he said, should I flatter you or should I tell you the truth? Of course, he would always tell them the truth. He would never flatter for some, he would never flatter. Yeah. So, but Srila Prabhupada would meet with these leaders, and he would actually become angry with them. He'd say, "Why are you not teaching your followers how to become?" He would use the word sinless, because much of the time he was talking to Christian leaders. Why aren't you teaching them how to become sinless? Why aren't you teaching them how to live a pure life? It's not impossible, but this particular philosophy, to err is human. The spirit is willing, the flesh is weak, right? All these different things. Everyone falls short from the, what is it? Kingdom or the standard, right? And then we see a big mess within religion. Well, what do you expect? I mean, they're following, or people are, I mean, also within temples, mosques, churches, synagogue, all of them. I'm not just pointing one, I'm all of them. This has entered. That's a problem. So now we see the fault, we may see the faults in others, right? That's not so difficult. But one thing in relation to that is that we have to be very careful about that, because we can be carried away by that. Like, for example, there was one bhakta. Bhakta means new man devotee. Bhaktin means new woman devotee. I guess they could be around for quite a while and be bhaktas and bhaktins. Like you have Bhakta Kevin, right? We'll go into ecstasy the day he gets initiated. But there was one bhakta, and yeah, I mean, not only was he seeing the faults in others, which, knowing who he was talking about, yeah, they were there. Anyone could see. But he just got carried away, and he would come up to me and he'd say, "You see that devotee? Or you see that person there?" Talking about one of the monks or one of the people. "They're a demon." And then some time would pass, and he would say, "You see him? He's also a demon." Now I knew these people, and they're not demons. They're devotees. Demon, it means against Vishnu, against Krishna. Not only against, but making propaganda, trying to destroy, right? Anyways. But he got carried away. Now, of course, someone would say, "Well, I'm not going to get that carried away. I mean, that's extreme. I'm not going to start thinking, one of my Prabhus or one of the devotees around is a demon." But even just thinking less of them, we have to be careful. It's very dangerous. That's why Srila Prabhupada would say it's quoting scripture, which I like to get the reference actually, because it's quoted all the time, that spiritual life is just like a razor's edge. All right, looks like we're getting a reference. So, just like a razor's edge, and razor's edge means we're not talking about these, we're talking about the real razor blade, right? You could shave very nicely, right? But also, if you're not careful, it could really damage, cut. So, in other words, spiritual life, we have to be very careful. Just some wrong or some movements in the wrong way or developing the wrong mentality, it could really carry us away. And this Krishna mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, right? He mentions, what's the Sanskrit? About just as, what is it? Like the boat, the senses, roaming. I'm sorry, we got very little sleep last night. Like very little sleep. I won't tell you how much. We had a program down there and went late, and anyways, I woke up the deities also, so it's... But what's that one about whatever sense objects the mind focuses on, it carries them away just as a boat, just as wind carries a boat. Maybe you could look that up so we get a very clear, description, because mine wasn't clear. Vrinda's going to go on the altar later, right? When she's older? Here. Indriyanam hi charitam, yanmano nuvidiyate tad asya hariti pragyam vayur navam ivambasi. So it says, as a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water. So you have a boat there, right? You have a very strong wind, just sweeps away. No problem for the wind to do that. I mean, wind, right? Hurricane, uproot houses, and it's just really intense. Even one of the roaming senses, so the senses that are roaming, on which the mind focuses, can carry away a man's intelligence. So this also goes to the mind focusing on certain things, or you could say in this particular case, faults of others. It could carry away a person's intelligence in the sense that they are not able to focus on advancing in Krishna consciousness. And that's what it's like. Practically everybody falls into this, in the material circles and in the spiritual circles. The world's going to HELL, and a bunch of devotees are on social media arguing about whatever, this. And sure, there's room for that, but a lot of these people, I would say, could be a lot more actively engaged in positively bringing people to Krishna consciousness rather than arguing with themselves. Because, as Srila Prabhupada said, our movement cannot be destroyed from external sources. Interesting. And, actually, you think about that, like Russia, for example, in the early days. I mean, devotees were like hiding out, and they were handwriting all, the books, and because the government wasn't allowing. I mean, and some devotees were getting locked up, but still it wasn't stopping. They weren't killed. Yeah, there's some instances, also. But still, devotees were going. Amazing. But there is some idea of things stopping. Looks like you got a message. Things stopping internally. In Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to have the right attitude. He says that in the Nectar of Instruction, in the preface. He says that advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower. More or less he says that, or in essence, he's mentioned this. So in other words, we should be very humble. And we shouldn't think that in any way, shape, or form that I am God's gift to this world. Or I am God's gift to the Hare Krishna movement. Or I am God's gift to this ashram, right? San Diego ashram. How would it go on without me? Or I am God's gift to the Pujari department. Or I am God's gift to the kitchen, or whatever. These are all privileges, the privilege of devotional service. And even if somebody may be God's gift, even if all of you are God's gift, still we shouldn't think like that. Still a person shouldn't think like that. Like Srila Prabhupada, he was actually God's gift, or Krishna's gift to the world, but he didn't think like that. So even if, we're descending from the spiritual world, well, it's kind of, I guess everybody's descending. What are they descending for? But Prabhupada was very humble, and so we should also be like that. And somebody sent me this, which I sent to Amogalila's phone, which I have Amogalila's phone right now. I sent to the brahmacharis, but somebody sent me this Yudhishthir, our old friend Yudhishthir. Yeah, big Yudi. There's small Yudi and big Yudi. Big Yudi, you know why there's big Yudi and small Yudi? Because Yudi stands for Yudhishthir. But, well, first of all, he's really tall and strong, big. But there's like Yudhishthir and Radha Dasi. And there's a couple here in San Diego also, Yudhishthir and Radha Priya. So pretty close somehow. But anyways, he sent this to me randomly. It's a short clip from one of Srila Prabhupada's lectures. So I guess if I want to play it, I just put it here, right? Or is it here? Right here. Yeah. Yeah, here. Sure? No, it's here, right? Okay, whatever it is. All right, let's turn it up. So this is Prabhupada demonstrating the right mood, his own mood and his own humility in relation to Krishna. Devotees seem to add a piano in the background, which, anyways, whether you're into that background piano or not, just the main point is to hear what Prabhupada's saying. So, I mean, personally, I could go without the piano, but that's just me. But the main thing is to hear what Prabhupada's saying. So don't get sidetracked by the piano. Okay. All right. So we'll try again.
Jimang bhaktya prajach. Real thing is bhakti. What you can offer to Krishna, everything belongs to Krishna. What you have got, what is your value? And what is the value of your things? There is nothing. Therefore, the real thing is bhaktya. Real thing is your feeling. Krishna, kindly take it. I have no qualification. I am most rotten fallen. But I have brought this thing for you. Please take. This will be accepted. Don't be puffed. Always be careful. You are dealing with Krishna. That is my request. Thank you.
So he's saying that I'm rotten, I'm fallen, what's the value of me, what's the value of the things I offer? Like in many ways, I mean, like, you could say, oh, my nice offering, or we're offering Radhagiri Dari, such nice, well, I mean, there's a lot of improvement that could be done just in terms of what we offer. like these, just from a material perspective, I'm talking about. The type of fruit, the type of vegetables, the type of this, the type of that. I mean, if you want to offer Krishna the best, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I mean, I don't know if you're going to get the best at Restaurant Depot, right? But Prabhupada's saying that, yeah, what's the value of our offering? But he's saying that the real thing is the feeling, the real thing is the bhakti, the real thing is the devotion. That's what is important. So he said that we should have devotion, we should be humble, and we should be careful. We're dealing with Krishna, we're dealing with the devotees. And there's this, okay, it's getting a little late here. All right. Well, I'm going to read two short things, and then we could. Can you find 11:28:2, please, Bhagavatam? We could end with that one. But this one, this is looks kind of old, right? I've had this for quite some years. When I joined the ashram, one devotee had this hanging up, and he left, and I inherited it. So, but because we always hear broomstick the mind, beat the mind with shoes, right? We hear that a lot. I forgive you once, I forgive you twice, third time, right? So we hear that. Now, what does that mean? Now, it could mean many different things in different circumstances, but here, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gives us a definition, or which, by the way, it's his quote. So it's like his quote and his purport to it. So it's very nice. So this is what he says. This wicked mind, which is never to be trusted, should be broomsticked every morning with such warnings. So it's saying you should broomstick the mind with warnings. And what are the warnings? Such warning as, quote, be not anxious to find fault with others, or declare thyself a true, sincere, bona fide bhakta, which certainly thou art not. So he's saying that we should tell, hey, watch it. Don't find fault with others, Declare yourself, right, God's gift to the world. Hey, be careful. Don't be puffed up. There is an adage to the effect that para chakera gatinahi konakale. A person who is habituated to criticize others' conduct will never prosper. And then he goes on, let others do whatever they like. I have no concern for them. I should rather find fault with my own damned mind and think like the Vaishnav who sings. Amara Jiban Sada Papirata. So he's saying, habituated to criticism, we won't prosper. In other words, we're not going to make proper advancement. Let others do whatever they like. I have no concern for them, but I should fault my own, he says, damned mind. And then he said, I should, and think, and he said, this is how I should think, like this devotee. Ever engaged in vicious activity. So I say, I'm not engaged in vicious activity. Well, what about, within our, right, previous lives, within this life, other lives, right? Forgetting Krishna, ignoring Krishna. This is the most vicious. And without the slightest trace of virtue in me, a liar as I am, always sorry at others' pleasures and merry at others' sorrows, troubles, and cares, we should, actually it ends there. A liar as I am, always sorry at others' pleasures and merry at others' sorrows, troubles, and cares. So he's saying that I have these faults, and that's what I should be focusing on, trying to rectify. We should always remember this song and engage our mind ceaselessly in Hari Bhajan, worshipping Krishna. We should not run about attacking others. Such contact behooves only deceitful persons and not preachers. Means that if we become too absorbed in this business, attacking others. This is for deceitful persons and not preachers. It means that preaching will stop, or teaching, or educating, or spreading Krishna consciousness. It will stop to varying degrees. And again, just go to the people, right? Sorry, but there's plenty of that going on. Just on the whatever computer, typing so many things back and forth with each other, and where's the book distribution going out? Where's the Harinam going out? Where's giving people classes on Krishna consciousness? Where's talking to people about Krishna consciousness? Where's training people in Krishna consciousness? Where's trying to be a friend to somebody in Krishna consciousness? It's not there. They're just typing, one devotee to another endlessly. It's never going to end. Next birth, right? So, lastly, all right, this is the last thing. This is a verse from, I believe it's Krishna. This is 11th canto. Whoever indulges in praising or criticizing the qualities and behavior of others will quickly become deviated from his own best interests by his entanglement in illusory dualities. So they become bewildered and become deviated from their own interest, and they become entangled. Politics. Entangled. Differences of opinion, faults of others, whatever. This is all just very entangling, actually. So it's not that we don't see it, we do see it, but we don't become overly absorbed in it. That's the idea. And, but better, as this verse is mentioning, better we turn to the Supersoul. Better we turn to messages of the Supersoul. Better we turn to helping each other connect to the Supersoul, to Krishna. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? Okay.
The verse is from the Katha Upanishad, 1.3.14, the one about the razor's edge.
Is this in the Bhagavatam purport somewhere?
Yeah, but I'm not reading from Bhagavatam right now.
Okay.
I'm reading from the Prabhupada's speech in 1936 by the spiritual master. And it starts with this famous phrase, which Prabhupada would often quote alone, Uttishtata Jagrata Prapavaran Nibodhata Churasidhara Nishita Duratya Durgam Patastat Kabayo Vedanti. Please wake up and try to understand the boon that you now have in the human form of life. The path of spiritual realization is very difficult. It is sharp like a razor's edge. That is the opinion of learned transcendental scholars.
All right.
That's
Nice.
A verse, right, in the Bhagavatam.
It is a verse, not in the Bhagavatam, Katha Upanishad. It may be quoted in the purport.
Yes.
In that last quote you said, Krishna said that praising is also not good for us. I didn't understand
Okay.
that.
Well, I mean, in this book, Bhakti Loka by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is a collection of essays about on the nectar of instruction, Shishuddha Upadeshamrita, Atyahara Priyasascha, over collecting, and Utsaha. There's these 6 principles that are favorable for making advancement and 6 that aren't. So we're not going to get into all the details of that, but in this section of controlling the tongue, or specifically prajalpa, Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes this verse, and he actually ends the essay quoting this verse that we just read from the 11th canto. But before that, he was saying how he was saying in the essay how there's different forms of prajalpa. There's like worldly discussions, talks of the matters of this material world. there is, and on and on and on. But he said, the worst out of all of them is sadhu ninda, or offending devotees. That's the worst type of prajalpa. And then he goes on to say that a devotee of Krishna does not want the association of pious people or impious people. Means, good-hearted people who aren't really interested in Krishna consciousness, and means impious people who are just kind of immoral people, don't want anything to... Devotees aren't interested in any of those groups. And he said, better to associate with somebody who is actually an impious devotee than these two groups. Like a materialistic devotee, or he used the word sinful. But anyways, and it goes on, and he also explains that sometimes a devotee may criticize others for the purpose of teaching. And he mentions Shukadeva Goswami criticizing the materialist, and a few other examples he gives. And he mentions this because, in the sense that, or else the students will have an unclear idea. But if a teacher criticizes a certain group of people for the purpose of teaching, then the students will have a clear idea, right? What's right, what's wrong. Now, he ends the essay quoting this verse that we just read. You should not praise others, and you should not overly praise others and overly criticize others. Now, in that purport in the 11th canto, Vridananda Goswami, he, following the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti, other previous acharyas, mostly the commentary in relation to this particular verse is mentioning in relation to materialistic people. Should not overly praise them, or you should not praise them and not criticize them. And as it's being stated in the verse, why? Because the point is it's a distraction. We become absorbed in the dualities of material existence, and it's a distraction. And instead of serving Krishna, worshiping Krishna, we're just thinking, oh, you see what he did? You see what they posted online, or whatever. You see whatever, on and on like that. So it's a distraction. You see how it's a distraction. But interesting is that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it seems from this essay, he's mostly relating it to spiritual circles, not overly praising and criticizing others. Now, in terms of overpraising, you could see how it makes sense, in the sense of, for example, Prabhupada said, there's actually a Bengali saying, it says, too much praise is a sign of a thief. So if someone's praising, it's like, all right, well, what does this person want from me? Is there some type of motive here? And many times there is. Too much sign is praise of a thief. I remember, anyways, this example of this, and yeah, it's just very clear. So we praise devotees, and we should praise them, right? I mean, it's also interesting because you could say that the spiritual master, he could praise the disciples a lot more if he wanted to. But it actually says you shouldn't praise the disciples so much, because there's also the danger of somebody becoming proud. Oh, my guru is praising me so much. And there's also a sense of the praise becoming cheapened. If every time I do something well, my guru really praises me for it, then I may loses the special nature of him recognizing or whatever, acknowledging or being happy that I did something well, right? Or I tried. So that's there too. So praising could be a sign of a thief. Overpraising could be also, cheapening the experience of the person, right? Of the relationship that's going on. Like Srila Prabhupada, for example. Now, whatever, I know some devotees some gurus hug disciples more than others. We're not going to get into the whole conversation, but to each his own. Everyone's an individual, right? Each guru is different. But Prabhupada would very rarely hug anyone. And there's only a few cases of Prabhupada hugging disciples. But you could imagine how, just from this particular point of view that I'm coming from, you can imagine how if a disciple never got hugged from Prabhupada, how special it is. Now, of course, you could say each time you get hugged from Prabhupada, it's special, but anyways, hope you see what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And in terms of criticizing others, it's a distraction. It's a distraction from, like I was mentioning, devotees fighting within the movement with each other, while there's a lot of people who are suffering without Krishna consciousness. So therefore the verse is saying we shouldn't become absorbed in the dualities. Yes.
Just one little thing. Raghunath Das Goswami, he said the person who praises me is my enemy. And the person who criticizes me, he's my friend.
Yeah.
Of course, that doesn't mean you go around and criticizing all the devotees. I'm trying to be his friend, yeah.
I'm helping you, Prabhu.
But yeah, both of them should, we should just do our service and not overdo either one.
Yeah. All right. So one last from.
I just have a question going back to the thought of ignoring the guest or ignoring Krishna. So if you have a significant relationship with someone and you feel that they kind of are putting you in that position of kind of just ignoring you and not really, kind of how you described, does that mean that the best thing that you can do for that person is just to be humble and patient and kind of wait for them to come around? Or is that kind of a folly in the materialistic?
I mean, people are of different natures, so it's hard to say. Some people are just kind of more standoffish and less emotional, like that, kind of. So yeah, people are of different natures, but the main thing is that in some ways you could say maybe it could be seen as a boon, oh, this person's not overly absorbed in me. Okay, great. So, because sometimes if people are overly absorbed in you, it's a distraction, and they want to spend all your time and energy, and it's kind of like they're not giving you enough time to kind of breathe and kind of do your own, So in many ways it could be a blessing that you could focus on Krishna, you could focus on your spiritual practices and, doing good things. And yeah, so you could see it like that. And yeah, to be patient and is always a good idea. All right, so thank you. And now we'll have breakfast. So, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.